Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. Top 5 tips to start learning Japanese. Tip number 1, use Japanese in your everyday life. This is in order to maximize input. There's an amazing video from What I've Learned on YouTube. He has a video called How to Learn a Language Input, Why Most Methods Don't Work. It's a very interesting video, and I can't really regurgitate it. You should really go watch it yourself. I'll put it in the video description. It's absolutely amazing video. So how do we use Japanese in our everyday life? As a beginner, you probably want to acquaint yourself with the more everyday words, like a wall, like a table, the usual stuff. So the thing you can do is you can write a post-it note, and you can write you have like a bookshelf, and you want to know what is bookshelf in Japanese? How do you memorize that? It's hondana. So you take the word hondana and you write it down on a post-it note and you stick it on the hondana, and every time you see the hondana, you'll know that bookshelf is hondana in Japanese, right? Another thing that I personally like a lot, because it feels a bit more immersive, is change your phone language to Japanese. Change your Facebook, Twitter, whatever you use, social media, change it to Japanese. Change your computer to Japanese even. I did that a lot when I was first starting out. And it might feel intimidating at first, but it is actually a really nice way to immerse yourself, and it absolutely helps a lot. But this kind of goes into the next point I have, which is to get very well acquainted with a mobile dictionary. It doesn't have to be a mobile dictionary, but it's really handy, it's really useful, because most likely you're not gonna be sitting in front of your computer all the time. So you'll want to have this dictionary that's mobile. You can bring it around with you, learn how it works, figure out how to search up new words. I have this video called How to Learn Kanji. It kind of brings up how to search up kanjis you don't know. That's a really good skill to have. Check out the video. But if we go a tiny bit back into the previous one again, another thing I also recommend is using a language exchange app or a website. For example, I myself have used Italki a lot. I'm not sponsored by Italki, and I probably will never be, but Italki is really handy. You can book lessons with teachers. You can click find a teacher. These people teach Japanese. And if you don't want to have a teacher, you can also go to community. You can write your own notes, and Japanese people, you can write your own notes in Japanese, and Japanese people or other people that speak Japanese might see your note. They will correct it for you, and they'll tell you what you did wrong and what you did well, things like that. It's really encouraging. It's really nice. You can write questions, and you'll get answers from other people as well about languages. It's not just about Japanese, about anything really. And you can find language partners as well. Fun fact, I actually met my wife on this website. We became language partners at first, and I can tell that story in another video if you're interested in that. Other than that, you've also got Discord. A lot of people use Discord nowadays, and if we scroll through my servers here, you can see there are a lot of servers about language learning. For example, you've got this one. Here's a server called Nihongo to Eigo. This one used to be very active before, and I'm sure it's probably active today as well. You can see a lot of people are writing stuff, they're asking stuff, you can get a lot of help. This one is the biggest one nowadays, I think. It's English-Japanese language exchange. You can see there's always people in the voice chat, and that's what I'm really recommending. Go into a voice chat, talk to people. Usually in servers like these, you can click on them and you'll see this person here is a native English speaker. And if you click on this person here, it will see here native Japanese speaker. So you know that if you join this one, there is actually a chance that you might talk to a real Japanese person. Now there's a lot of people here, so you might not be able to talk that much to the person unless you're very charismatic and you speak louder than the other guys. But generally, it's a really nice thing. And finding these servers is pretty easy. You can just go to Google and search Discord Japanese server. It's pretty simple. So, Tip number 3 is challenge yourself. Obviously, going out of your way to learn a language already is a challenge, but it's important that when you improve a tiny bit from the absolute beginner level, you'll notice that it's quite easy for you to do like very simple exercises to repeat, memorizing very simple words, probably getting pretty easy. You have to push yourself a bit more out of that comfort zone, challenge yourself, do things you're not comfortable with. Super important, absolutely got to do that. So in order to challenge yourself, you could, for example, try to write something in Japanese. Try to write a short story or write some monologue or something. Or you could, using like italki or another language learning website, you could, for example, try to find someone, send them a message. You could try talking to them, use some words that you've learned. And that's a really good way to challenge yourself. It's very important to never get too comfortable, when you're learning a language, because then you'll just stagnate and you'll never progress. Tip number 4 is don't pick material that's too hard for you. Some studies have shown that if you got some material that you're trying to learn, like new stuff, if around 90% of that is new vocabulary, that's perfect. But if you go higher than that, you're not going to learn anything at all. But if you go lower than that, it might be a bit too easy and you don't really maximize the potential you could have learned in that session, Tip number 5 is a pretty interesting one. Don't spend too much time with beginner learners. This is something I see a lot of people doing, me included at some point. It's kind of like what we talked about before. When you get a bit too comfortable with one thing, it's hard to challenge yourself and get better. And a thing you can get a bit too comfortable with is just talking to people of the same level as you, talking to other beginner learners. Because at first, it's like this brand new thing. It's super challenging. It's really cool. But at some point, you're just sitting there, with the guys, and you're like, oh, yeah, the watashi word? Yeah, I know that so well now. Oh, and the hondana? Oh, I'm really good at that. I remember that so well. And you realize that after some time, you'll actually spend way more time talking about a language, talking about all these ways you can conjugate the verbs, all the different types of adjectives you got. You got the na adjectives and you got the e adjectives, and the verbs, they got the ru verbs and the u verbs. If you spend too much time talking about that, that's like the thing you'll know. You'll be really good at language terminology. You'll be better at linguistics rather than actually knowing the language. And if you're into linguistics, like I am, I love linguistics, that's totally cool. But if your main goal is to read manga or to watch anime or to live in Japan or something, play video games in Japanese, you're not going to be able to do any of that if you spend all your time just talking about the language rather than using the language, right? So those were the 5 tips. Now let's go on to some Japanese resources. Number 1, the Genki books. These books are the books I started with back in the day, and these are absolutely amazing books. They are written by these 3 people, and they're published by the Japan Times. And if we take a look at these pictures, you can see there are 4 books. There's a textbook for level 1 and 2, and there's a workbook for 1 and 2. So you'll be buying these 2 books first of all, the orange ones, and you'll learn stuff in this one and you'll write exercises in this one. And then there's the book number 2 with that. If I were to put this on a scale from 1 to 5, like the JLPT, Japanese Language Proficiency Test, I would say that these are about JLPT 5 in this one and around 4 in this one maybe. It's not like a super high level, but it's pretty good if you're an elementary learner. And once you've done those, I absolutely recommend jumping over to this one. It's Learning Japanese 2. This is actually kind of like the third book, really, in the series of Genki. It's not called Genki, but it really is Genki 3. It's even published by the same people. It's published by the Japan Times. And it has the same setup as well. You got the textbook and you got the workbook. The style of teaching, everything is very similar. Absolutely amazing book. I got it right here somewhere. And this one is something I really like, and I don't think a lot of people know about this. It's one of my favorite ways to learn Japanese. You can see the website's kind of old. This is Human Japanese. This is actually an app, but it's an app made like a book. So you got these two apps, basically. You got Human Japanese, and then you got Human Japanese Intermediate to take your Japanese to the next level. You can choose, actually. Either you buy it on Windows or Mac or iPhone or iPad or Android. The thing is, the thing that's kind of mad about it is if you buy it on the Windows Store, you're not going to have it on the Mac App Store because there's no license. You have to buy it separately. So find the place you'll be most comfortable doing this and then buy it there. Like I used to have an iPhone back in the day, so I got the first book on the iPhone and then I changed to Android, and then I have the second book on Android. Basically, what it is it's like a book. It's written in a way that is like a textbook, but you also have audio stuff. And in addition to that, you also got quizzes at the end. You can keep doing them. You get like experience points, and it feels a bit more gamified, right? It's a bit more fun. It's not just like read and repeat and all that stuff. Next up, we've got something even more gamified. We got Duolingo. Duolingo came out with their Japanese course relatively recently. I personally used Duolingo for a lot of other languages when Japanese wasn't out, so my Japanese level was already pretty high, I guess, when Japanese came out on Duolingo, so I didn't really try it out that much, you know? I took a look at some of this, but at the end I just decided to do a placement test and I got to the end, and that's cool and all, but I took a look at some of this. They got tips here. It's really nice. They show, like, for every single thing they've got all these lessons here. And for every single lesson, you've got tips. And tips, the name says tips, but it's more like an actual lesson. Like, this is the lesson, really. It says start lesson, but this is the actual lesson. And when you go back, this here is like a quiz to see if you know stuff from the lesson, and you're also going to learn new stuff, and that's really cool. The course is actually really huge. Like, when I first did the placement test, I got like to the end, and the end was like here or something, and then they made it even bigger, so I did a new placement test to get to the end there again. You can also compete with people. I'm not really a fan of the league system, but you can compete with your friends here as well, and it's just really fun. You can see like all-time XP and compare with your friends. Really fun. Absolutely recommend that. Here's kind of a more niche thing as well. Next up, we've got Erin ga chousen nihongo dekimasu. Erin's challenge. I can speak Japanese. This is a website that does require Flash Player, so you probably have to do this before Flash Player gets removed from the internet. But they've got lessons here, and they'll play a short skit, like a short video you can watch. And they've got subtitles, and you'll learn new words, and then they repeat some words that you've learned, and you'll be able to do some like repetition of those words. They've got these like basic skit, advanced skit, and you get key phrases from those skits, and then they do like "Kore wa nani?" What is this? And they show something, and they teach you some new words. It feels a bit like for children, but it's really, really good if you're a beginner in Japanese. And they've got 25 lessons. And here's the cool thing. When you're done with this, you can click up here, select language, Japanese, and bam! You can redo all of them in Japanese and read the Japanese. And it's a whole new level of challenge now. Next up, the final resource, I would say, is after you're kind of done with these beginner books, beginner websites, Human Japanese, once you've done all of that, go and read books, play video games. My personal favorite is playing video games in Japanese. It's so much fun. I have spent hundreds and hundreds of hours just playing a video game for learning purposes. Obviously, I played amazing games, so I did enjoy them a lot, but it was mostly for learning the language. Especially like Final Fantasy games are amazing. Pokemon games are really cool. And the thing is, if you buy the new Pokemon games, you can still play the game in Japanese, usually. A lot of Nintendo Switch games generally have Japanese support as well. And that's it for the video. If you have any other topics you want me to talk about, feel free to write that in the comment section. And I'll see you in the next one.